Well, hello, everybody. I'm Larry Jacobs. This is Pre-K-12 Education Talk Radio, and it's September 7th, 2023. Thanks for being here with us today. We do appreciate it. We got a nice show for you today from the Council for Exceptional Children. Okay, Claire Hughes is here, who's a professor of gifted education, special education, and twice exceptional education at Cleveland State University in Ohio. And also we have Wendy Behrens here, who is the gifted coordinator for the Department of Education in Minnesota, and she's an expert on twice exceptional students, and teaching them, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Thank you, CEC, for putting this all together. And I just want to mention that we were supposed to have Associate Professor of Special Ed from Lamar University in Texas, Debbie Troxclair, with us, but unfortunately Debbie's under the weather, and I just want to wish her well. And sorry she couldn't be here with us today. But it's going to be a nice show. We're going to talk about something that is truly exceptional, and that is teaching twice exceptional kids and making sure that people understand what that is, what it means, how schools should work within, and what we should do to make sure these kids learn and learn well. We're going to archive the show over at ace-ed.org. ace-ed.org. That's our home website for our American Consortium for Equity and Education. And if you go over there, you'll see all kinds of wonderful articles. You see our magazine, which is called Equity and Access. Just scroll down or scroll over and click on the cover. A new issue is there for you. All of our podcasts are there, and our Excellence in Equity Awards program is there. You can just click through and please participate. Everything's free over there for educators at ace-ed.org, and we'd love to honor those people who do a really good job in equity in schools and pre-K-12. So check it out. Join in. You can nominate yourself, your school, your colleagues, companies, et cetera, et cetera. Check it all out over at ace-ed.org, and we hope you do. You're cordially invited over there. Let me say hello to my two guests. Good morning, Wendy. How are you?
I'm absolutely fine. Thanks so much for inviting us to be a part of this show today, Larry.
Oh, believe me, you are more than welcome. I got to tell you, it's going to be a really, really nice show. And also, how are you today, Claire?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having us, Larry.
No, my pleasure. And Claire, I just want to make sure that you're at Cleveland State in Ohio, right? Is that where you teach? Okay.
I do.
Yes.
I do. They started a twice exceptional teacher education program there.
Okay, that's excellent. I just wanted to make sure because I always remember there's also a Cleveland, Mississippi, and I see for some reason
Cleveland, Georgia, and there's a Cleveland, Georgia.
It jumped on me that maybe I'm thinking about the wrong Cleveland. I just wanted to be sure. Okay, so Cleveland State. Yeah.
The second largest theater district in the country behind New York, or the Mistake on the Lake, whichever one you want to call it. So.
It's changed quite a bit since the lake caught fire. That's all I can tell you. I think it was 1960-something. Oh, my God. Well, it was amazing. But, it's a great city. It really is home to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I might add. And, Wendy, you're in Minnesota. Are you in Minneapolis, St. Paul? Where are you?
Well, actually, the Minnesota Department of Education is located in Minneapolis, and I live further south. I live in Red Wing, Minnesota.
Oh, sure. Home of the shoes, if I'm not mistaken. Is that where they make the Red Wing shoes?
That is absolutely true. One of the largest employers in our community.
There you go. See, I somehow know this sort of stuff. And you've actually written books on twice exceptional kids, right, and teaching them. Am I correct?
Yes, I have. And Claire has also written on this topic as well. So we're really excited to be able to chat with you about our work and about the not just the changes that are going on in our field, but raise understanding of these really unique students.
And so let me ask you this. Oh, go ahead, please. Go ahead. Whoever's going to say.
Oh no,
that.
I was going to say I wrote a chapter in one of Wendy's books about gifted kids with autism, and then I have a book of my own of parenting bright kids with autism. So
it's amazing, isn't it? Yes. Go ahead.
If I might add, I think that that book that you've written, Claire, on parenting students with autism or parenting children with autism is probably the only one of its kind. So it's really we're so lucky to have her. Truly, I love working with Claire.
There you go.
Wendy brings everybody under the tent. So she's a facilitator of amazing conversations. So we work very well together and quite enjoy collaborating.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Mutual Admiration Society of Wendy Behrens and Claire Hughes, and both well-deserved, I might add. Okay, these guys have worked together for a while. All right, this is important because it's special ed oriented, and we really care about special ed. But I'm curious. Okay, we're talking to mostly educators who are not special educators; they're just educators. Okay, and I'll throw this to Claire. She's at the top of my list. Claire, why is it important for just the typical educator to understand about twice exceptional children, like for instance, gifted and autistic, that type of thing?
Sure,
okay. Claire.
Because so much of it depends on the lens that you look at a kid. So if you go looking, as I used to tell my own children, if you go looking for problems, you're going to find them. And so if you go looking for deficits, particularly for twice exceptional children, you're going to find them. But I don't think there's anybody in life who wants to be defined by what you struggle with, by what you need support with. And so if you go looking for positives, if you go looking for strengths, you'll find those too, particularly in twice exceptional children. So they have significant strengths and significant areas of challenge. But it's so important to use both lenses in order to help a child grow, because you have to support areas of challenge, but you also really have to look for what kids can do and what their strengths are. And that's true for any education perspective. So what's true for what I often say is that teaching twice exceptional kids is what you want to do with all kids. It's essential for these kids. They have difficulty growing or being challenged if you don't use both lenses.
So how does this affect a typical are educators trained to even spot this? And I assume we want this spotted in pre-K or elementary, okay? And that's to me is the first step. How do we know it's even there, and where's it fit in? And I'm always concerned about this into the education schools and the education curriculum for teachers. And I'll stick with you since you're a professor at Cleveland State. Go ahead, Madam Professor. How are they? What's going on with the education schools in this? Because you need this from the very beginning. You find it in 8th grade. If you had the kid for 8 years, oh, geez, imagine that. So let's talk about how it affects the typical pre-K or elementary school teacher, and when they get these kids.
It's actually critical at every stage, because they may be coping fairly well. There's what we call the masking effect, which is that they're bright enough or they're smart enough that they can figure ways out to not look challenged. And so it's often not till 3rd grade, 6th grade, 8th grade where it really starts to kick in that, there's a problem here. So some kids will demonstrate it early, demonstrate really significant strengths early, or they'll demonstrate significant challenges early. But some may look typical. I liken it to a duck. The duck can look very peaceful on top, but they're paddling like crazy underneath. And we don't see that level of stress and anxiety and work until high school sometimes. So it really is important for teachers to really think about that at every age.
Well, now that is important. Okay, so now let me swing over to the Department of Education in the great state of Minnesota. Okay, Wendy, okay, are we even training educators to look for this, to find this? How are we doing on that? Twice exceptional.
I'm so glad.
Or even exceptional. Once exceptional. But how are we doing with that? Because we have that. I was a history teacher, okay, and back when I was in college, the special ed didn't even exist. It was never mentioned, okay. Guidance counseling was barely mentioned, okay. They taught me how to history, all right. And I know education schools have changed. I know that, okay. But have they changed enough to understand what's going on with the special ed population? In this case, twice exceptional.
First of all, I am really thrilled that you asked this question because professional learning and teacher preparation is really the foundation that prepares our field. It prepares us to do this work. Unfortunately, you may be surprised to learn that across the country, not all teachers are prepared to work with gifted learners, let alone
I'm not surprised.
students.
Yes, I'm not surprised at all. Yeah.
Students who have both gifts and who have other challenges. So one of the things that I would say to you is that unless you are in a very, very unusual program, I'm not going to rule out the fact that they exist, but I would say that I'm not aware of any programs that prepare teachers to work with students who are gifted and twice exceptional during their initial licensure period, meaning that teachers enter the classroom and for the very first time after they've become teachers, and we know right now there's a critical shortage, we're trying really hard to increase the pipeline into schools. So we have teachers that are entering the classroom who know very little about gifted learners, if at all, and the whole concept of understanding that a student can have unusual advanced abilities in addition to be struggling in some ways is foreign to them. So, no, teachers are entering the classroom, and in most cases, they have a lot to learn about these students. It's one of the reasons why most gifted education programs are, or licensure or any sort of professional learning occurs after that initial licensure period. So in other words, it's in graduate school. And of course, many teachers don't enter graduate school right away. We wish they would, but they don't. And so you can imagine that they are unprepared to manage these strengths. Now, and of course, the special needs. Add to that something that Claire talked about a moment ago, this ability to spot these kids and how difficult it is, even for experienced teachers. It's quite a conundrum. When we think about gifted learners, oftentimes the students' gifts will mask their special education needs. And vice versa, a student who has strong special education needs may appear to be just that and not have a clue, and we may not have a clue as to what their actual potential is and their abilities. So it's really important when we think about this that we increase that understanding, and that's where programs like the one Claire is associated with and others are really beginning to make a difference.
They have to make a difference. And I have to ask you something because you've both been doing this. Okay, I want to get a definition of twice exceptional because you both mentioned it. We're talking about special education, okay? But I think we're talking about gifted plus something else. When we say twice exceptional, and I'll stick with you, Wendy, we say twice exceptional, is it always gifted plus something else?
Yes, that's what the term is right now. And when we think about it, or when I think about it as the marriage of two branches of education. One being gifted education, which focuses on identifying advanced abilities and providing enrichment and opportunities for talent development, and special education, which has a focus on identifying not just the deficits that a student might have, but also remediating. In other words, how to make certain that those special education needs are not only addressed, but that they're not interfering, in my personal opinion, with their special education, with their gifted education needs.
Yeah.
So in my world, I'm thinking about two very different sets of needs that need to be addressed without excluding the other.
Exactly, which brings. So we're having trouble finding special education teachers. We're having trouble, Claire, finding gifted education teachers. There's not that many of those. Okay, and how are we doing? You're at the program at Cleveland State. How are we doing with finding educators who are interested in this and doing this? This is really cool because everybody thinks they want to teach gifted kids, which requires a special pedagogy. Okay, it's really important. Okay, add to that the special needs. Okay, that's a special educator, and you've got a really interesting combination of educator there. Okay, how are we doing with that program? How many kids are involved in it? Just at Cleveland State, or what you do? That sort of stuff. It's really interesting when it's defined like that.
The program kicks off in January, so it's.
Oh wow! Congrats! I hope it works great.
But it is an online program, so it's accessible to everybody. What I find really interesting is that we haven't done much with teacher preparation, but there are a number of schools that are addressing twice exceptional children. So we've got desperate parents, we've got teachers who understand, we've got there really is a significant impact at school level. So there's public schools like the most well-known one is Montgomery County, Maryland, has had gifted learning disabled programs since the 80s. But but some around D.C. are starting some programs. There's one in San Antonio, just identification and service. So the schools are recognizing that there are some. Then there are a number of private schools that are starting programs, either by parents who were desperate or psychologists who saw the need.
Right.
So it's a bit of a groundswell from parents and educators who are asking for something to be done with these kids. I think one of the barriers that are in the way, there's a couple of barriers. So special education is mandated. Gifted education is not, because there's always, and I'll just sort of address the elephant in the room, as it were. So folks tend to think of gifted education as, why should we give to those who already have?
Right.
We've got such deficits. Why do we have to do this? And the argument that I always make is that when you have twice exceptional or even just gifted kids, you don't learn advanced material unless you're taught advanced material. You have to be exposed to advanced material in order to learn it. If we in schools say, we're not going to help those kids, only the kids who come from families who can supplement, who can support, who can enrich, who can do those things will get their talents developed, will get their abilities recognized and promoted. So it's one of the most inequitable things is to not have the gifted program, because you're really just letting those families, those families who can support their kids, who can take their kids to museums, they're the ones who are going to get their talents developed. And so I always make the argument that one of the most inequitable things is to take away gifted programming, because you're basically essentially saying, these kids from these populations, they don't need their, we don't need all that. Right.
Yeah.
So there's that first mindset to get past. And then the second mindset is, wait, how do these coexist? So just convincing people. But as a good friend of mine who's very well known in special education said, I didn't really believe in twice exceptional until I had a kid. And I think it's always that experience, that first time you go, oh, this kid is doing math 2 grade levels ahead and yet can't read the math problems.
Well, that's saying something right there. What percent? I'll stay with me for a minute, Claire. What percentage of kids? I guess I don't know how to say this. I'll ask you. What percentage of kids are we talking about? And I don't know where that measure is. It just special ed. What's percentage of kids we're talking about? Yeah.
Well, it's a
help me there. Just
measure.
Put it into whatever perspective.
Sure.
Yeah.
Theoretically, if you want to be real conservative, and I always love answering this one because it's a theoretical answer. Because if you want to be real conservative, 10% of kids have special needs. You know, you're talking about kids who are challenged or experience challenging learning in some way, and about 10%. It's actually about 15%, but let's call it 10%.
Okay,
and
we'll
then
call it 10. That's a lot.
And then about 10% of kids have real potential strengths. So 10% of 10% is 1%. So if you look at the special ed population, right? So if you look at the special ed population, about 10% of them should also be gifted and talented. If you look at the gifted population, about 10% of them should also have disabilities. And again, these are conservative numbers. So it's about 1 in 100, which is not a small number. It's bigger than kids who have hearing impairments. It's bigger than kids who have visual impairments. It's bigger than many populations in special education. So it's not a small number. We're not identifying them. So that's why I said it's theoretical. Yeah. The best state so far has been Colorado.
Congrats to Colorado.
Congrats to Colorado. They've got about 9% of their gifted population identified as having disabilities, so they've almost gotten there. Wow. You know, other states, every other state is far behind that. So it comes very low to almost there, but not quite. I think Virginia is fairly high. Maryland is decently okay. You know, but again, we're missing millions of kids. Millions of them.
We are. And how did Colorado do that? How did they do such a good job? What did they change?
They had an advocate at the State Department, and which is why I'm so excited that Wendy's here.
I was just going to go rah Wendy. Now you know whose door to knock down today. Yeah, go ahead. Anyway, for Minnesota.
They did a community of practice where they took everybody to the table, and I remember talking to their coordinator, and she said there is no gifted ed, special ed. There just is ed, and we all have specialties, and we talk about it. There is no. And they really broke down the silos. So I know at their State Department, they had done an amazing job of really promoting the programs of doing some things. So there's a number of programs, and I think Cherry Creek and Aurora and around the Denver area for Twice Exceptional as well. So, again, the schools themselves are often the promoter of we've got to do something for these kids. 1 in 100, very conservative number, and that is not a small number.
And I want to ask you this, okay? And I'll throw this one to Wendy just for give you a little break, okay? Claire, thank you for that. Wendy, okay? We want every school to be like Colorado, but there's got to be a challenge between, and this is you got great high-priced suburban schools, okay, rural schools, etc., and then you've got urban schools. All right, education is very diverse in and of itself, as we all know. How are we doing in that breakdown? Where do the best programs are the best programs available to the under-resourced schools? I mean, I went to school in Philadelphia for K-12, okay, and in Philadelphia they're having trouble. You know, they are. They try every day. They're terrific educators, but they fight the resources that are available to them. You know, what's going on in terms of the demographics of good twice exceptional education.
You asked,
and if you don't know that,
and if you don't know, that's
your next book. If you don't know, that's your next book. It's a good one. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Larry, there are a number of factors that make it difficult to determine how we're doing in this area. One of the factors has to do with the collection of data. Not all of our schools, not all of our states require reporting of gifted learners. Not all of our states provide funding for gifted learners. Not all of our states recognize the existence of twice exceptionality. Gifted education
they don't recognize the existence?
No.
They just don't have.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Wow. Gifted education in the United States has often been called a patchwork of services.
Yeah,
and whole concept of local control.
I work with NAGC a lot on this stuff, so I know a little bit about it, you know. And you guys certainly know NAGC, okay? And
of course.
It's amazing out there. I just have to say this because school districts are always most proud of the kids who do the best. Oh, we got 12 kids into Harvard last year, okay? So here we got the gifted kids, okay, and we can't get a program together for them. Okay, it's the goofiest rationale in the world. I just don't get it. Go ahead.
Well, I would absolutely agree with you,
Crazy.
And I would make this point that every child deserves to learn something new every day, and
Here.
Not all of our states are prioritizing students equally. Now, that's kind of a strange statement in itself. I won't use the word prioritizing. Perhaps the correct word would be not all of our states are treating all students in the same way. And the reason I say this is that so many of our gifted kids are literally languishing, while a tremendous amount of energy and resources are being dedicated toward students who are not performing at grade level. I don't think it's a question of either or. It's a question of yes and.
Good point.
And so when we talk about gifted education, first, we need to figure out who these kids are. The identification of students for services remains an enigma for many people. And then when we add to that further masking effect that we see with twice exceptional learners, it really does become complex. And among the things that make it complex are the introduction of other factors such as culture, such as poverty, such as exposure. Our English language learners may be difficult to identify as well, when in fact one of the things that we know is that English language learners are learning at very quick rates.
Absolutely.
And oftentimes they're actually easier, in my opinion, to identify as gifted than some other students, because their acquisition of language is so quick and so thorough. But going back to, how do you find these kids, that has a tremendous amount to do with how does a state like Colorado, reach this amazing level of identification. And what I will say to you is that Colorado, like a number of other states in the country, is more prescriptive in gifted education than some other states, meaning that they have strong requirements in a number of areas. Adding to this situation, what you mentioned earlier, are kids who are living in rural areas being provided with the same level of service. It depends. It depends on the state. Now, in Minnesota, I would like to think that our students are receiving a high level of service. And notice I said the word service. I didn't say program. And that's a distinction that we're making in our state, and I'm beginning to see it in more and more states. Good. Because if you're a really small school district, it's really hard to have a well-developed set of programs that serve a minority, a really small number of students. If your K-12 population is 600, how many gifted kids do you have?
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing. If you have, if we take that same 10% that Claire talked about, even that is a small number. When we think about providing services, we talk about addressing the student's needs, which is the beauty, I think, and the lesson that we can learn from special education. It's not about programs. Special education is finding the student's specific needs and accommodating those needs. In my mind, we need to take a lesson from our colleagues in special education and say, how can we focus on individualizing education in the same
way? The equity issue again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so what we find is that when we focus on services, we have a much better opportunity for a student to become the best version of themselves. Now,
Wendy, I got to ask. You just brought up something that strikes me, and so I want to ask Claire this because she's involved in this program. Okay, so pardon me for just interrupting your thought, but I got to ask Claire this. There's kids everywhere, and like Wendy was just saying, Claire, in small districts that really can't afford, they can't even find a teacher if they wanted to. Okay, but we have technology now that allows a teacher who's an expert in twice exceptional kids, and let's say they're where I live in Maine, okay, and there's kids in some little town in Minnesota, okay, but we have the technology to connect them, okay. Has anybody put together, and maybe CEC has, I don't know, or somebody, a program that connects school districts to these teachers, so that these teachers can work with the kid and actually work with that kid's teachers, okay, to make this happen? Because now we can all connect, okay? It's not like 1950, okay, where you were just in your class. We can connect everybody. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Wendy, but of course I just did. So forgive me for that. But the thought just crossed my mind. Okay, Claire, you're putting together a program. How do we make something like this happen?
Well, I'm we're literally on the cutting edge of so many.
And by the way, you can steal the idea if you want. It's your idea. Go ahead. It's Claire's idea, no. Everybody. Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
No, it's not even just an idea, but we're on the cutting edge of so much technology and things happening. So I'm on a committee in higher ed right now on AI, the use of AI.
Yes.
And there's a quote from Hugh Herr, Herr, who is head of the bionics lab at MIT, and I use it all the time in presentations, and it says there's really no such thing as disability. There's just poor design for technology or environment. Meaning if you can design an environment or design technology in such a way that the book reads itself to you, if you have a reading disability and you can't make sense of the visual information, then you don't have a disability anymore because you can get the information.
That's right.
So I'm fascinated at what I see the possibilities for AI. I'm fascinated, but we're not there yet. We're not. We've still got schools who are rural, and we've still got schools. I'm excited because my program, for example, is an online program, so we've got teachers from all over the country who are signing up for it. So there's that, there's that piece right there that's just plain online education, and so that's exciting. But in terms of actually what happens with kids, I think there's some amazing possibilities that are just on the horizon of what we can do. One of the things that that's benefiting sort of twice exceptional education is the focus on special education has sort of reached a point where they're asking, so if we're providing all these supports and accommodations, for what purpose? It's not just to get to grade level, it's to help a kid learn. So if we focus on these accommodations, these modifications, these things that we do in special ed are to remove barriers of learning, well then why don't we focus on the learning of the kid? And so gifted education focuses on that learning of like, oh, that's exciting, let's learn something new, And so there's a very nice complementary relationship there. In special ed, they can call it strengths-based education, where the idea is that we're removing barriers so that kids' strengths we can see kids' strengths, they can promote their strengths, and that is environment. That's a mindset. Again, coming back to the lens piece, it comes back to why are we removing barriers and why are we helping kids with special needs? Because we want that to help them learn. And if you've got a twice exceptional kid, then they should learn where they are.
Wow. Are you there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I thought I lost you for a second. I agree with you. I mean, we really got to get this together. By the way, what's the name of your program at Cleveland State? What's it called?
It's the Twice Exceptional Teacher Education Program. 2ETE.
There you go. I'm just giving you a plug here. You can figure it out.
Free plug. I love it.
Yeah.
But it's
people
it's
listening. You never know.
Education.
Yeah.
And we bring special ed and gifted ed strategies, and we talk about they'll come out with both understanding of gifted ed and understanding of special ed, because they really do complement each other. As Wendy said, they're a marriage of two fields.
I do, and it and to me, again, it's got to be part and parcel of general teacher education to some extent. Okay, it's just part and parcel of what's going on. Everything changes out there. I'm going to ask you a last question here before we go, Wendy. You work with CEC. The CEC, how do they? I'm hoping people join up with CEC, certainly administrators, et cetera, so they can start working and learning on all this. And, should they join CEC? Is that a good place for them to go for all this? Wendy, do you think?
Oh, yes, of course it is. The Council
of course it
for
is.
Exceptional
I knew the
Children.
answer to the question. I just figured I'd ask it. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you why. We're talking about an organization with over 20,000 members worldwide. While organizations, particularly education organizations and others, are losing members, CEC is growing. And one of the reasons it's growing is that it has a wide number of divisions that allow for a focus in specific areas.
Yeah.
Now, Claire and I are both involved in one of the divisions called the Association for the Gifted. And that, I think, is how we came to be associated with you as well, Larry. The Association for the Gifted, or also known as TAG, is one of those organizations or one of the divisions within CEC that's working to increase understanding of what not only gifted education is, but also the importance of understanding twice exceptionality. One of the things that CEC is doing very, very in the very near future is that they are having a professional learning fair. I can't remember whether it is September 27th or 28th, but if you go to the CEC website, you can find information on that.
Thank you.
But you can also find a variety of information, professional learning courses you can take on your own at your own pace that are online. You can sign up for quite a few webinars as well. Another thing that I would mention is that there are divisions within CEC, like TAG, the Association for the Gifted, that have annual conferences in addition to CEC's conference. Now, CEC has a big national conference with thousands of people later on. Actually, it's early 2024, and I believe that we are going this year to San Antonio.
There you go.
But I would also tell you something super exciting, and that is that the Association for the Gifted is teaming up with Cleveland State University to have a conference in October. And I'm going to turn this over to Claire, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
so
Claire, we got about 2 minutes
mention
left.
a little bit about that.
Yeah, Claire, I didn't know that. I would have said it at the beginning. Please, go ahead.
Oh, we're very excited. October 13th and 14th, we're having a conference for teachers, families, administrators, professors, who's ever interested, graduate students, to come share strategies, because it's not as much as a teaching place, because we're still in the process of learning. We're learning about these kids. We're learning about strategies. We're learning about what helps. And so it's an opportunity to come together to share, and it's virtual. So it's hybrid, actually. So you can either come to class in October, which is spectacular, or you can come online. I know. Or you can participate online. We have a variety of choices for online. We have some folks coming from the Netherlands and coming from Denmark. And so it's very exciting in terms of an opportunity to network.
Can you send me a link, and I'll put it up here? Can you send me a link
Absolutely.
to that?
Ooh.
So there you go. It's Larry at ace-ed.org. Larry at ace-ed.org. Just send me the link. I'll put it up in the show description. Okay?
So I guess, going back to your original question was,
yeah, we only got a minute or so left. But go ahead, please. Yeah.
And
yeah.
I would just tell you, for me, it's all about the professional learning. And I think that's incredibly important.
And the networking.
The networking,
I think that's really important.
And of course, if you belong to TAG, we have an outstanding journal that we publish as well. Each of the divisions and the state organizations within CEC provide an infrastructure for getting that information out. And as you know, that's the beginning of real understanding.
It is. It is. And by the way, just before we leave, I'll just say this. We always talk about this, and I know most of our listeners are teachers, and this is also important for school board members to understand. Okay? That's where the money
is.
Yeah, and although, they have their own association, quite obviously, but they need to understand what's going on in the body of education. Ladies, I'm sorry, we're running out of time. I got to go. You're going to send me that link, right, Claire?
I will. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, you're
really
welcome. Thank you both. This was fun. I appreciate your expertise and your good natures, and good luck with everything you're doing. It's going to be great. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Okay. Be good, you two. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Lovely ladies. That's Claire Hughes, professor of all these wonderful things, gifted and special and twice exceptional at Cleveland State. She's going to send me a link, which I will put up here as soon as she sends it. And Wendy Behrens from the Department of Education in Minnesota. And she's an expert on twice exceptional kids. Well, the world's changing. We can't shuffle these things off to the side anymore. We really can't. And that's why I keep doing these shows. All right? It's an equity question. We're going to archive the show, speaking of equity, at our home website for our American Consortium for Equity in Education over at ace-ed.org. And by the way, if you ever want to write me, just come on and write me at Larry at ace-ed.org. Thanks for listening.